Welcome to Kostal Guitars. Come on in. The first room that we come into is probably one of the bigger work areas in the shop. I like wide open spaces. I feel like the more space you have, the less cluttered things get, the cleaner the work you do. I try to always keep the shop clean and organized, and that allows me to do clean and organized work as well. As you look around, what you see is most of the things that you see in every woodworking shop. A lot of clamps, routers, different tools, band saws, drill presses, dust collection, kind of the entire gamut of what we use here. This is kind of the big workbench. I like this one because I can reach it from all four sides. I can lay a guitar down and be working on multiple projects at a time. Over on the far wall, I've got 3 band saws. One is set up, the small benchtop band saw is set up just to do binding. I make all of my own binding, and that allows me to cut it on a regular basis. The next one is an Italian resaw made by Laguna. I use that to cut fingerboard blanks, neck blanks, a lot of the really big wood, and it makes a really clean, precise cut, which is really necessary in the work we do. And the last bandsaw is kind of the everyday use one. I use that all the time, and I'm very happy with it. Kind of panning over, we've got a couple edge sanders. This one is just used kind of indiscriminately for certain little operations. The main one that I use is this one over here. And it allows me to just basically sand stuff at a pretty fast rate. Throughout the shop, I have multiple go bar decks. Go bars are basically a Japanese clamping method. It allows us to clamp in the center of a piece of work, and you'll see various radius dishes for the guitar. I have 6 of these throughout the shop, and it allows me to work on multiple backs and tops at the same time. This is probably my most important piece of equipment. This is a laboratory grade granite block, and it's essentially, for our purposes, flat. And it's flat across the diagonal to within about 2 to 3 thousandths of an inch, which makes a really good reference when I need something to be flat, true, straight, that kind of thing. I have some various sandpapers on here that allows me to basically sand material and know that when I do so, the joint is going to be a really good fit. I have a couple drill presses set up. One's set up for rosette cutting, one is for a robo sander, and then I have a standard drill press over here that does whatever I need it to do. In this area, I have a microwave and a blender that's actually for preparation of hide glue and also shellac. So I do all that preparation down here. This is not my little cooking station. And then what you see around you is basically my sharpening station. I have the sharpening stones, which I think are probably one of the finest stones made. And I've got stones that go from 220 grit all the way to 30,000 grit, which allows me to really get a nice hone and a sharp edge on my chisels and planes. Again, another go bar, some basic whetstones and Japanese stones, and then over here I have kind of the entire gamut of all the different sharpening machines that are out there. The Tormek, the Work Sharp, and the Lap Sharp, and they all have different purposes. Essentially what they do is they allow me to speed up the process. What I have found is that the easier it is to sharpen something, the more apt you are to sharpen it. And so I hate working with dull tools. I like working with something that's incredibly sharp, and these allow me to get it to within 95% of where I want it to be, and then I can use the stones to take it that last little bit. But the result is that I always have sharp tools, which is safer and allows me to do much cleaner work. We'll see the chisel collection in a little bit. The next room that we're entering into is essentially my milling room. This is where the larger equipment is. Table saws, time savers or wide belt sanders, dual drum sanders, mill machine, joiner, planer, kind of the large equipment that I use maybe not every single day, but still has a definitive use within building guitars. What you see around me are essentially the jigs and fixtures that I've created to replicate procedures that I do in guitar building. Consistency is something that's really important in any product, especially a guitar. How the neck feels, how the guitar itself plays. Clients want that to be consistent. And in order to replicate a process and be consistent, I use these jigs and fixtures that allow me to still do something by hand, but essentially replicate a process over and over again. And every single thing that I've made is something I've kind of come up with on my own, and essentially allows me to do one or two procedures and do them to a standard that I'm happy with. So it's an exciting thing, because building guitars is not just about building the guitar itself, but thinking through the creation process and how you actually build the guitar, and then developing methods that work for you. So that's basically what you see around me. The next room here is basically the wood room, or down here in Phoenix it's the humidity room. This is the one room in the shop that's humidity and temperature controlled. All of the wood here has been acclimating for years. I've had most of my wood supply for probably about 10 years. And it stays in here, comes back in here each night after I'm done working on it. What you see over here is essentially all of the backs. The sides are against the far wall. Every single set that I own is numbered, so it's matched, numbered, and inventoried and photographed. The benefit to this is when I have a client that contacts me, if they say they're interested in a guitar made out of, for instance, koa, I have every set of koa that I own photographed and numbered. I can send them those photographs, they choose the set they want, and then I can pull that set off and essentially prepare it for use. So this whole entire racking is all of the backs. I've got some of the backs and sides pulled already for the next couple guitars. Rims for this year are basically up along the top. Over here we've got purfling and binding, and then this baker's rack is basically my way of keeping organized. These are all of my projects for the year, and every guitar has its own shelf, and I have the backs and tops set up, and fingerboards and things of that nature. So the nice thing is I can come here, I have all the materials organized for each guitar that I'm working on. Behind me is a lot of the accessories that go into building the guitars. The top shelf is head cap veneers, bridge plates, some materials for use with rosettes, spare brace stock, fingerboards, bridge blanks, more fingerboards, neck blanks all along the bottom. And then up here is essentially my year of work. So when I first start out the year, all of the tops and backs are in these slots because they haven't been joined yet. Once they've been joined, they go to the baker's rack. The same thing is set up for these neck blanks up here. I start out with putting the neck blank aside for each guitar, and as I get to work on them, I start to mill them and get them ready. More binding, backstrip material over here. On this shelf, basically we have all of my tops. The nice thing, I've got at least a little bit of pretty much every type of material that you could want to use for a guitar. Brace material. Up on the top is basically just some spare wood. I make all my own binding, bridge plates, stuff like that. So I buy the wood as raw lumber and then ultimately mill it and stuff. So that's all just up here waiting to go. Down here I have a rack which is all the bodies that are currently in production. As I build the body, it goes into this shelf, and then as I finish it and I add the neck, it then goes under this rack here in the window. So I have some different places for guitars to rest while they're being created. So this room is basically my primary work room. This is where I'd say I do about 80% of the work. As you can see, an entire wall of hand tools. When I got started in this, I preferred to use power tools. I was a lot more comfortable with them, and it seemed like it made the work a lot easier. What I've found over the years is as I've gotten more proficient in using chisels and planes and things of that nature, the work that I'm able to do is more precise, more controlled, and I actually feel a lot more comfortable using a chisel than I do a router. I've had too many opportunities to watch a router kind of take on a life of its own, and you don't have as much control over it, whereas a chisel is a very tactile, tangible experience, and as I'm cutting wood, my brain is interpreting what it's feeling, and I can actually control the cut a lot cleaner. The result is you have to take good care of them, buy good tools, but the result is a really sharp instrument that I can use for the work that I do. So these workbenches are my primary workbench. The benches are actually away from the wall. I don't know if you can actually see it, but there's a cork-filled ledge behind it. So if any of these tools were to fall, they're not going to fall onto the bench. They're actually going to fall behind the bench onto a lowered platform that's layered in cork. So the tools aren't going to get damaged, but they're not going to fall onto the bench and hurt the material that I'm working on. There's also a ledge back here. And what's nice about that is I can push the work that I'm working on up against the cork, and it gives me a really good solid surface to work on. A lot of measuring tools, things of that nature. Over here, we basically have our bending forms. I use the new LMI benders. I've been really happy with them. I like the control and information that they give me, and having kind of the closed circuit where it tells you the temperature, adjusts the temperature, things of that nature. What I find is I get a much more controlled bend, and since I've started using these, I've never had issues with bending wood, which has been really nice. So I've got two of them, so I can bend my sides and inner laminates simultaneously, and it just makes the process go a little bit faster. So this closet is just a lot of the smaller stuff that goes into building. I have inlay material, metal rods, tuning machines, reconstituted stone. I have wood that I've dyed for my rosettes, different strings that I use on a pretty regular basis. What you find is that when you get into guitar building, you spend a lot of time and energy getting small little tools and things like that. So that's, you'll see all over the shop, I just have all kinds of little storage areas, and it's just to store everything that you need for building guitars. There's an inordinate amount of sandpaper used in guitar building, and I try to keep everything organized. So I've got, again, a bunch of different sandpaper over here, even more down here, and my grits range from, I guess, about 35 grit all the way up to 2,000 is what I use on a daily basis.